Detective Rachel Monroe had spent most of her career investigating crimes that eventually made sense. Murders had motives. Robberies left evidence. People lied, but eventually the truth surfaced. Disappearances were different. Disappearances were cruel. Families were left waiting. Birthdays passed. Holidays came and went. Hope slowly turned into grief. And sometimes, the truth never came. Rachel understood that pain better than anyone. For 6 years, she had carried the weight of 7 unsolved cases. 7 women. 7 vanished lives.
No bodies. No witnesses. No arrests.
Nothing. Most detectives eventually moved on. Rachel never did. Friday morning found her standing inside the evidence room. Officer Daniel Hayes entered carrying a cardboard box. "You really aren't going to let this go, are you?" he asked. Rachel looked up. Lauren Bennett fits the pattern. Daniel placed the box on a table. Maybe. No signs of robbery. Maybe. Vehicle abandoned. Maybe. Phone left behind. Daniel sighed. Okay, I get it. Rachel opened the box. Inside were files covered in dust. Cold cases. Forgotten cases. Cases everyone else had stopped believing in. But Rachel hadn't. She spread photographs across the table. Melissa Harper. Julie Sanders. Nicole Ramirez. Amanda Lee. Rebecca Collins. Jennifer Cross. Sarah Evans. 7 women. Different cities. Different occupations. Different lives. Yet somehow connected. Daniel examined the photographs. The age range is almost identical. Rachel nodded. 26 to 32.
No bodies. No suspects.
Daniel rubbed his chin. And now Lauren Bennett. Rachel stared at the latest file. 8 women. The number hung heavily in the air. Meanwhile, in Willow Creek, Ethan Mercer spent the morning helping his elderly neighbor, Frank Wilson, repair a fence damaged during a recent storm. "Couldn't have done it without you," Frank said gratefully. Ethan smiled. "That's what neighbors are for." Frank laughed. "You know, Ethan, people ought to be more like you." Across the street, Emily Carter watered her flowers. She smiled when she heard the conversation. Everyone loved Ethan. Everyone. It was impossible not to. He remembered birthdays. He volunteered at church fundraisers. He donated to local charities. He even coached Little League for several years. To the people of Willow Creek, Ethan Mercer represented everything good about their community. And that was exactly why no one ever questioned him. Later that afternoon, Ethan drove to his auto repair shop. The radio played quietly. News reports filled the airwaves. Police continue searching for missing Cincinnati woman Lauren Bennett. Ethan switched stations. Country music replaced the report. He preferred music. Music didn't ask questions. At headquarters, Rachel sat in front of a map covering an entire wall. Red pins marked the locations where each woman had disappeared. Officer Hayes studied the pattern. They're spread all over Ohio. Rachel shook her head. Not exactly. She connected the points with a marker. Daniel frowned. What am I looking at? Rachel circled Columbus. Look closer. Suddenly, Daniel's eyes widened. Every location surrounded Columbus, like spokes on a wheel. No city was more than 300 miles away, and Columbus sat directly in the center. My God, Daniel whispered. Rachel nodded. If we're dealing with one person, he lives here. Daniel stared at the map. Or works here. Exactly. For the first time in years, they weren't looking at random disappearances. They were looking at a pattern, and patterns led to people. That evening, Rachel visited her daughter Olivia. The 22-year-old journalism student greeted her with a hug. You look exhausted. Rachel smiled. Long week. Another case? Rachel nodded. Olivia sighed. You know, Mom, one day you have to stop carrying the whole world on your shoulders. Rachel laughed softly. I know. But she didn't. She couldn't. Not while families were still waiting. Not while answers remained hidden. And certainly not while someone out there continued taking innocent lives. Back in Willow Creek, Ethan sat alone on his back porch. The sun had disappeared below the horizon. Crickets chirped. The neighborhood remained peaceful. Normal. He liked normal. Normal meant safety. Normal meant no one suspected anything. His phone buzzed. A text message from Emily Carter. Neighborhood cookout. Next Saturday. Hope you can make it. Asterisk asterisk. Ethan smiled. He typed a reply. Wouldn't miss it. Simple. Friendly. Harmless. He slipped the phone into his pocket. Then he looked toward the stars. For years, he had perfected his routine.
No mistakes. No emotions. No witnesses.
He had studied investigators, studied the news, studied human behavior. People saw what they wanted to see, and they wanted to see a good man. So he gave them one. But lately things felt different. The television reports, the increased attention. Something had changed. And Ethan Mercer hated change. Because change created uncertainty. And uncertainty created danger. Saturday morning brought another surprise. Rachel Monroe received a phone call. Detective Monroe? Speaking. This is Detective Brian Keller from Cincinnati. Rachel sat upright. What do you have? We found something. Her heartbeat quickened. What? There were fingerprints inside Lauren Bennett's vehicle. Rachel grabbed a pen. Whose? We don't know yet. Anything else? Detective Keller hesitated.
Yeah.
Rachel waited. The prints don't belong to Lauren. Silence filled the room. For years, every case had yielded nothing. Nothing. And now, finally, a clue.
Small.
Fragile, but real. Rachel slowly smiled. After years of chasing shadows, the darkness had finally left something behind. She didn't know whose fingerprints they were. She didn't know where they would lead. But somewhere out there, someone had made a mistake. And for the first time in 6 years, Detective Rachel Monroe felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. Unfortunately for Ethan Mercer, hope was the most dangerous thing an investigator could possess. Because hope made people relentless. And Rachel Monroe had just become more dangerous than ever. Neither of them realized it. But after 15 years of hiding in plain sight, the cracks were beginning to appear. Detective Rachel Monroe barely slept that night. For 6 years, every lead had ended in disappointment. Witnesses remembered nothing. Security cameras revealed nothing. Forensic evidence provided nothing. But fingerprints were different. Fingerprints belonged to someone. And someone could be found. By 8 o'clock Saturday morning, Rachel and Officer Daniel Hayes were already inside the conference room. Coffee cups sat untouched on the table. Files covered every available surface. Daniel yawned. Tell me again why we couldn't do this after breakfast. Rachel smiled faintly. Because I'm too excited. That's what worries me. Before she could reply, her phone rang. Detective Brian Keller. Rachel answered immediately. Tell me you've got something. Keller sounded disappointed. Not exactly. Rachel's heart sank. What happened? The fingerprints don't match anyone in the national database. Daniel groaned. No criminal record? Rachel asked. No record at all. Rachel leaned back in her chair. So we're back to nothing. Not entirely, Keller said. What do you mean? There were 3 fingerprints. Rachel straightened. 3? 2 belonged to Lauren. After years of chasing shadows, the darkness had finally left something behind. She didn't know whose fingerprints they were. She didn't know where they would lead. But somewhere out there, someone had made a mistake. And for the first time in 6 years, Detective Rachel Monroe felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. Unfortunately for Ethan Mercer, hope was the most dangerous thing an investigator could possess. Because hope made people relentless. And Rachel Monroe had just become more dangerous than ever. Neither of them realized it. But after 15 years of hiding in plain sight, the cracks were beginning to appear. Detective Rachel Monroe barely slept that night. For 6 years, every lead had ended in disappointment. Witnesses remembered nothing. Security cameras revealed nothing. Forensic evidence provided nothing. But fingerprints were different. Fingerprints belonged to someone. And someone could be found. By 8 o'clock Saturday morning, Rachel and Officer Daniel Hayes were already inside the conference room. Coffee cups sat untouched on the table. files covered every available surface. Daniel yawned. Tell me again why we couldn't do this after breakfast. Rachel smiled faintly. Because I'm too excited. That's what worries me. Before she could reply, her phone rang. Detective Brian Keller. Rachel answered immediately. Tell me you've got something. Keller sounded disappointed. Not exactly. Rachel's heart sank. What happened? The fingerprints don't match anyone in the national database. Daniel groaned. No criminal record? Rachel asked. No record at all. Rachel leaned back in her chair. So we're back to nothing. Not entirely, Keller said. What do you mean? There were 3 fingerprints. The third belongs to someone else. Daniel exchanged glances with Rachel. Male or female, he asked. We don't know yet. But it doesn't match family?
No.
Friends?
No.
Silence filled the room. Even without a name, the unknown fingerprint represented something important.
Proof.
Proof that Lauren Bennett hadn't simply disappeared. Someone had been with her. Someone who had never been identified. Someone who might have made a fatal mistake. 3 hours later, Rachel stood before the map in her office. She couldn't stop staring at it. 8 women. 15 years. No connection.
No witnesses. No suspect. Until now.
Daniel entered carrying lunch. You haven't moved. I'm thinking. Dangerous hobby. Rachel smiled. You know what's bothering me? Besides everything? These women. Daniel sat down. What about them? They don't know each other. Different cities. Different backgrounds. Different careers. So, what's the connection? Rachel pointed at Columbus. The offender. Daniel sighed. We're assuming one exists. Rachel looked at him. 8 women don't vanish by accident. He couldn't argue with that. At the same time, Ethan Mercer attended the Willow Creek Community Fair. Children ran through inflatable castles. Families enjoyed live music. The smell of barbecue filled the air. Mayor Thomas Reed shook Ethan's hand. Good to see you, Ethan. You too. Still keeping everybody's cars running? Ethan laughed. Trying. Several neighbors stopped to greet him. Emily Carter walked over carrying lemonade. You coming to next week's cookout? Wouldn't miss it. Jacob Carter smiled. You know, Ethan, someday you're going to have to teach me how to grill. Ethan chuckled. Happy to. Everything looked normal. Everything felt normal. But deep inside, something unsettled him. A strange instinct. Like a distant storm. Invisible, but approaching. He had learned long ago to trust his instincts. They had kept him alive. Kept him free. For 15 years. That evening, Ethan returned home. He checked the locks twice. Closed every curtain. Then he sat in silence. No television. No radio. Nothing. Just his thoughts. And thoughts were dangerous. Because lately they had become louder. News reports. Police investigations. Faces. Names. Questions. He hated questions. Questions destroyed order. He glanced at the basement door. Then quickly looked away.
No.
Not tonight. Instead, he poured himself coffee and opened a book. But he couldn't concentrate. For the first time in years, anxiety had entered his carefully controlled world. And anxiety brought mistakes. Sunday morning, Rachel Monroe attended church with Olivia. The service focused on hope, forgiveness,
Second chance.
but Rachel's mind remained elsewhere. Afterward, Olivia noticed. Mom. You're working again. Rachel smiled. I know. No, you're physically here. But mentally you're somewhere else. Rachel laughed. Occupational hazard. Olivia hesitated. Do you think you'll solve it? Rachel looked toward the parking lot. I don't know. But I think we're getting closer. Closer. The word frightened her. Because closer meant someone dangerous existed. Someone intelligent. Someone patient. Someone who had escaped justice for years. And if they got too close,
Would he stop?
or would he kill again? Late Sunday evening, Officer Daniel Hayes called. Rachel, you need to see this. 20 minutes later, Rachel entered the office. Daniel stood before a computer screen. What am I looking at? The victim locations. Rachel frowned. I've memorized them. No, look at the dates. She leaned closer. 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008. Rachel blinked. No pattern. Exactly. She frowned. Wait. Daniel nodded. Long gaps. Rachel's eyes widened. Cooling periods. Daniel crossed his arms. Like he's stopping.
No.
Rachel shook her head. Not stopping. She looked back at the dates. Hiding. The realization chilled both detectives. Their suspect wasn't reckless. He wasn't impulsive. He was disciplined, patient, calculated. The kind of offender who could blend into society. The kind who lived ordinary lives. Who smiled. Who paid taxes. Who attended church. Who waved to neighbors. Who looked completely normal. And those were the scariest monsters of all. Meanwhile, Ethan Mercer stood in his garage. Rain pounded the roof outside. Thunder echoed across Willow Creek. He stared at an old photograph in his hand, one taken years earlier. His expression remained unreadable. Then he placed it back into a locked drawer. He closed the drawer carefully. Everything had a place. Everything had rules. Rules kept chaos away. Rules had protected him for 15 years. But even rules couldn't silence the thought that kept returning. Something had changed. He could feel it, like an animal sensing danger before seeing it. He walked outside. Rain soaked the driveway. Across the street, Emily Carter's lights glowed warmly. Children laughed somewhere down the block. Life continued. Ordinary, peaceful, safe. Ethan stared into the darkness. And for the first time in many years, he wondered if his luck was finally running out. 100 miles away, inside a forensic laboratory, technician Sarah Watkins reviewed the fingerprint report one final time. Something caught her attention. She frowned.
No.
She enlarged the image, compared measurements, checked again. Then her eyes widened. Immediately, she reached for the phone. Because the unknown fingerprint found inside Lauren Bennett's car had revealed something unexpected. Something no one had anticipated. And by Monday morning, Detective Rachel Monroe would learn that the person she had spent 6 years hunting had just become far more real. And far more dangerous. Because the fingerprint wasn't alone. There was another one. And this time, it matched. Because the fingerprint wasn't alone. There was another one. And this time, it matched.